Namaste. Welcome to a new Paradigm of Education podcast. I'm your host, Monique Sayers, and today we have a very special guest, Brittany Tackett. Before I introduce her, I just wanted to explain what a new paradigm of education is. Well, you may be looking around and seeing to yourself and just being in that place of stillness and peace. From that moment, you're able to be a source for yourself, a source for your children, a source for education and empowerment for the world. So on this podcast, we bring together a range of people from across the planet. They're change makers of all different kinds. Some are parents, some are teachers, some are business owners. The main thread that holds us all together is that we're here to rise for the highest good of humanity and for the highest good of our students, our beautiful children of the world. So I'd love to introduce you to Brittany Tackett. She's a mother, a transpersonal life coach, a yoga and meditation teacher, and she's the founder of HeartFirst Education, whose mission is to educate the whole person heart first. Oh, wow, what a beautiful mission. So welcome to our show today, Brittany. I'd love to hear a little bit about you. Could you introduce yourself as well? That would be amazing.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. So I am a transpersonal coach. I've also done a lot of therapy over the past few years. I have a master's in transpersonal psychology. I really chose to go that route rather than the clinical route because I found that it was just so focused only on the behavior. And I really felt the call to focus on, the spirit as well, mind, body, spirit, really a holistic approach to the human psyche and to healing and growth. So I'm really glad I went that route. And in my work as a therapist, I worked as a mental health therapist in schools. So I worked in public schools, elementary school, high school, and I really started to see that there was something lacking there, that we didn't quite have that whole picture, and that there was so much focus on the mind and on educating the mind and very little on educating the heart. And I noticed that the kids would start referring to me as the feelings teacher. Even though I was the therapist, they just thought, oh, I'm going to see the feelings teacher today. And I thought, wow, wouldn't it really be neat if they actually had something like that? And, here at our schools, we have school counselors, but they would only see the counselor for like an hour, not even quite an hour each week, just once a week, where they have, math and all these other things every day. And so that's what really called me to start HeartFirst Education, just so that we can include emotional intelligence in our children's education. I think it's huge. It's so important.
It is so necessary and it is so needed. And it's amazing that there are people like yourselves creating these alternative programs in schools and even programs within schools that are able to support. I love that you're saying mind, body, and spirit. And I just wanted to share on a side note, in our book, In a New Paradigm of Education, we actually talk about the need for the energetic quotient. And this is a new term that we coined in the book by one of our authors, Carrie Jesselo, because in education, they refer a lot to the IQ, which we all know, is the intellect. And then they also refer to the EQ, which is the emotional intelligence, which a lot of the learning programs have been focused on. But there's this extra element of the NQ, which is the energetic body of work that works in with your brain, that allows better learning, better growth, less anxiety, less trauma. And it's almost like a superpower, a hidden superpower that hasn't been tapped into by everybody in the world. And yet I think here we are, educating our children, but they could be educating their whole brain rather than just these two aspects. And I'm sure there's going to be more and more research and more discovery around this. And it's, for me, something I've embodied within myself, through mindfulness and through meditation. So I didn't really need to research it or know about it. But upon writing our book, we found more and more information just about how it's it's documented, and it's time for it to be normalized, across the planet. So I love your work. Thank you. I'd love to know more about it. Could you be a bit more specific and tell me who do you serve, or what do you do in the programs, or just so I can get a glimpse of what it feels like to come to your school or your program or whatever you call it.
Yes. Right now what I'm doing is it's all online. I started right around the time the pandemic hit is when I transitioned from working in the schools to facilitating the HeartFirst Education work. And so I've been working primarily on Zoom with children, teaching out school classes and teaching them these emotional intelligence skills. So I have a course, I Can Calm, where we teach calming skills. I have anxiety management courses, yoga for emotional intelligence, virtue development, all these things. And then I also have curriculum, so people can buy the workbooks, and I'm setting it up so that hopefully in the near future, they'll be available to be used in schools. So my goal is to broaden this for it to really be a community, and not just me, but really a community of people and educators and parents who want this work and want to get it in, schools nationwide, even worldwide. It's been really beautiful to see all the schools that are starting to realize the importance of social emotional learning and implement it, and they're looking for these programs. So that's one piece, is with the children. But then as I started getting deeper into the work, I realized that it's not just children who need this work. So it was educate the whole child, heart first. And I thought, really, I want it to be the whole person, because a lot of us adults need work too, where we didn't necessarily learn these skills when we were younger in school. A lot of us are going back and doing healing work and reprogramming. And so I incorporated my work with adults into this as well. And so one program I have is called Lean Into Love, and it's a 40-day meditation, heart-centered meditation program where you commit to the practice for 40 days. And just in doing that, just even as simple as 10 minutes a day, meditating on your heart and bringing up feelings of love and compassion for yourself and others, it really is transformative. And we do it, in a supportive group where we meet weekly, and it's really just a beautiful thing. So I really love the work I do, and I'm just so excited to see, more and more people doing these things as well. I was really excited when I met you and heard about the book, and yes.
Thank you. Yeah, it's amazing, this new paradigm of education. As you're saying, everything has just started to shift, and it's not because of the pandemic. In some ways it is because of the pandemic, but I feel like it's a global shift that was coming anyway, in terms of quantum, with new earth birthing and everything like that. But I think what's beautiful is there's been this kind of, as you're saying, people have noticed themselves finally, I'm not happy inside. Oh my gosh, I've been lockdown all this time. I need to look after myself. And finally people, I shouldn't say people, because I know a lot of people are looking after themselves, but maybe some new types of people have decided, it's time that I notice that in myself, and I choose to wake up and I choose to help myself in order to help my children and my family and things like that. So I think that's really powerful to be able to also support just people through meditation. And it's also one of my passions as well. It's like we've met each other for a reason, because it's actually what I do as well. It's one of the gifts that I have in the world, is being able to sit in silence and just be a channel of light and healing, and show that to people for themselves, that they can heal themselves and connect in with their inner divine. And I know for myself, I used to have anxiety as well. And as a teacher, even when I was in my early days of teaching, and all of that shifted when I flew to India, and I woke up. Basically, I just did lots of meditation courses, and literally my brain transformed and my whole being transformed into this state of joy, which of course you can still have emotion with, but it's like this state of peace with no matter what happens, no matter what storm is coming. And it's just this amazing state that I wish everybody to have, and especially our children to be born from parents that have that state. And if you don't have that state and you're listening to this podcast, don't worry. It's completely normal. Parents do get, emotional. I know know I do for sure, even now with my daughter. But what the beauty of that is that we can use these tools like what Brittany's offering in her courses, and this amazing program that she's saying, like this 40 days. Imagine how you'd feel after 40 days of showing up every single day for yourself, and not only for yourself, for your family and for humanity, because as we rise, the world is rising as well. So wow, that's so powerful. I love that so much. Can I ask you some questions like about the old paradigm? Because maybe some people are curious about that, and you've got a bit of a wealth of knowledge in terms of your psychology in schools and things. Like, was there any kind of I don't know what to share about that, but was there anything that you wanted to share around maybe the anxiety or the trauma or the students that you were trying to help, or any of that stuff? I know it's kind of old now because we've all started to rise away from that, but it might be helpful, or it might help parents to feel what they could do or something like that. Does that make sense, what I'm asking you?
Yes. I'm not sure where to start, really.
Sorry, it's a big question.
It is. It's like, where do I even start? But just from what I've seen in, the time that I was in the schools, it's just so focused on the academics. And even though there were wonderful teachers there, and I'm sure having been a teacher yourself, these teachers have their hearts in the right place. They're great, but they are kind of confined to these standards, the test scores. And so that sort of dictates how everything is done. And then I feel like the child is somehow missed. That connection with the child is somehow missed, that's not always the case, but it just seems like so much focus is on that work and the academics and getting those test scores that they miss out on really teaching the hearts of the children. And, it's just a stressful environment, I think, for kids to be in. And so my idea of a new paradigm of education is one where kids are out in nature, right? Like, I know I read a statistic of how kids can identify, like, I think it was thousands of logos, corporate logos, but very few plants, right? And so it's just such a shift from the way that we have done things in the past. And it's very by the book. And I don't know, I just see a whole different way that we could do things. And it's slowly, we're having these little shifts, and I'm just so excited to see the movement, as we grow.
Yeah, it's already been happening around the world. A lot of people are saying no to the mainstream for different reasons. Could be for health reasons. It could be for other reasons. There's a dog. We're in nature today, everybody, on this podcast. So yeah. Anyway, it's really loud. It must like what I'm saying. Wow. So got anything else to say to me today? I've lost what I was going to say, but more or less along the lines of, these nature schools are being built. Like in my country, in Australia, for example, there's these things called co-ops that are being built, and they're these kind of hubs where it's a community of people that come together, like the parents and the teachers are coming together, in a garden, in someone's backyard, or somewhere in a different venue, and they're just pulling all the kids together and creating this new format of education. Which really actually corresponds with what I did see in the book, which I saw this kind of circular shape, which was like everybody holding hands. So like you, Brittany, me, Monique, our children, then, their children, and, everybody else in between, all of us together with no sort of one fixed person as the leader and no fixed structure. So it was really hard to write, well, how do I actually write about this? And like what actually goes into this curriculum if it is a circle, because it's constantly changing based off what's needed for that child in that place at that time. It's like evolutionary. So how do you even do that? But what I love is that you have taken steps, and you have made a course that that has started to program into the new paradigm. So it looks like I'm going to be blessed today with flowers on this podcast by my daughter. It seems like we're going to have a real new paradigm podcast here with everybody joining in. Okay, so my next question, after I've been showered with these amazing flowers, maybe we can talk about that energy. Did you want to talk about energy with me? That's what we're being asked to talk about. Okay. So let's talk about energy in education. That sounds good. The flowers being blessed on me, I think that's a sign.
So what about energy in education? I would love to hear more about.
I don't know, well, when I think of energy and I think of education, I think of like, the shift that education can take from being stagnant to being in flow. I think of it in terms of mindfulness in schools. It's kind of like what we were already talking about.
Yes.
I don't know if anything comes to mind, maybe some of your yogic practices that people could use within a classroom, or that energy just came because my girl was throwing flowers on me during the podcast. And I was like, okay, energy, as Einstein says, everything is energy. And there we just had a beautiful little change maker come and throw energy literally on us. So I was going to go with that a bit.
Well, I loved what you were saying earlier about the model, like being circular and kind of fitting the needs of what the child needs in that moment and that day. And that's so different from the old paradigm, which is very linear, very structured, and also like a lot of competition almost and competitiveness. And it's all about, your grades and your scores. And there is that different ranking. And so to come together and for everybody to just be equals and to come together to learn. And it's about collaboration and community rather than the competition and all of that. So I think that's a whole different energy right there, just to bring the empathy into it. And yes, definitely more mindfulness in schools. And I think yoga too, like teaching children to find out, like, oh, I'm feeling this, like I'm feeling stressed right now and I need to calm down so I can take these deep breaths, or, I can move my body in these ways and it's going to help me to feel differently, right? I know I didn't have that when I was growing up at all. And I really could have used those tools, and I had to learn and unlearn as an adult. I had to unlearn all the stuff that really wasn't healthy or good for me. Kind of the little survival strategies I picked up on the way because I wasn't taught the skills. And then I had to learn like what does work. So I think, we're really setting children up really for a better future, by starting young. I know that in the 90s here where I live, we didn't have anything like that. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I totally hear you. And it was kind of like this almost taboo subject, like in the old paradigm. And now it's like, I feel like it's essential and necessary. It's part of health, as you're saying, like body, mind, and spirit is all part of health. It's not just one aspect, like let's go for a run or let's do our homework. Not that I really, I'm aligning with homework, but I'm just saying, there are two examples. It's almost just like, okay, well, now it's time to meditate. And that can also happen anywhere. Like even as I'm sitting here under these trees, I can be absorbing the energy of the plants. And that's also a form of meditation. Like my girl was just throwing flowers all over me. And how do I interact at that moment? Am I going to be all stressed and contracted? Like, oh my gosh, she's on a podcast and everybody's going to see that my daughter's on a podcast. No. The new paradigm is, okay, come along. You're part of it. Okay, we're in flow. All right, that happened. Okay, now what's next? It's like, what am I doing with my body and my energy at that moment, and to transmit that out to other people. And yes, you're right about the competition as well. That was another download that came through, that there's no need for competition, because actually what happens is it's about the ego. So if the ego is not there, well, there's no room for competition. And then also there's this total place of just thriving, because like there's no other Brittany, there's no other Monique. So why do we even need to compete? Like our gifts are unique, are coded to ourselves. And so what I'm here on this planet to do may be similar to you, but all we can do is, work together and work off each other and help our students. There's no need for it to be that way. And I was feeling deeply into that, even into programming around like children's TV programs and things like, where do they pick up this need for competition? For example, my daughter really has a strong competitive edge in her. I know that I'm competitive. Okay. Like I know that I've done, lots of competitions in my life. So maybe it's part of her DNA. I don't know. Is she seeing it in other places? Because I'm not encouraging her to be competitive. I'm always like, well, we're equal. I came second. Wow, that's amazing. There's not even a first and a second. Let's just smile and laugh about it. But she's seeing it in places, and it's being imprinted through things that I have to study, which I don't know. Like, is it genetic DNA? I'm not sure. But what I can see now is that the more and more that I'm able to like release myself and allow myself to just be that space holder and rise above looking at things compartmentally, then that is allowing space for this no need for competition. And also time as well, like, you know, like when they have 5 days a week at school, which then transforms into 5 days of work, it's like this kind of treadmill of an imprint almost, like that children have been gifted or given as like what is the normal. And so imagine if that shifted in a new paradigm, even as it's shifting now. We've got cats,
Yeah.
dogs and children today. This is beautiful. Thank you, world. Yeah, so imagine that, like, where everything, I don't know what's going on with me. I can't even speak today. I'm just kidding. Everybody on this podcast is going to hear me and just be like, what is she talking about? But I'm energetically picking up on this beautiful love that Brittany is sharing with her cat at this moment. And it's just like, it's so beautiful to share and to see. And that's also showing no competition, because love is the place, you know? So
Yeah.
I did want to go somewhere around that 5-day thing and just finish it off for the people that were listening. Just to say that I've seen this happening already when you think about how, as grown-ups, myself even, as a grown-up, you know, have decided to do more entrepreneurial ways of living as opposed to following a 5-day routine. So I therefore know that my daughter will see that in role modeling. And if I choose to unschool her or homeschool her or choose another path of schooling, she won't be doing the 5 days a week of school. And that would just be a natural thing for her. I still am in a place of seeing where that's going. I know it won't be in the mainstream system as such, and I know that things are going to unfold. So I don't need to know at this moment. She's just 4, but I just wanted to kind of energetically put that out there for people on the podcast that are considering, well, what is a new paradigm? How can I shift, or what can I do? I think it's happening anyway.
Yeah.
And then I think secondly, the little actions that we take are going to kind of compound around us as well. Do you think so?
I definitely think so. I think a lot is shifting, and I know for me, I'm taking a different, you know, alternative with my daughter. We're homeschooling, and then we do like once a week at a co-op, and we have a group here, and so we do that.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and then I'm doing the entrepreneur thing now too, after I was working, you know, the full-time 5 days a week. And at first it was a big transition for me, because I realized that I didn't really know how to structure my own day and how to manage myself, because I had went to public school. I had always worked for someone else. So there was always somebody else leading me. And I realized that now in doing this work that I'm going to be teaching my daughter how to lead herself from an early age, which is a lot different than, you know, my upbringing was. So I think that's another thing too, is getting kids that independence and learning how to be, you know, be your own leader, and to know what's good for you and what works for you. And it doesn't necessarily have to fit the same, you know, societal like structure, basically.
Yeah, and also what she's seeing you create as well is also another imprint of, well, this is learning, as opposed to it necessarily being a maths book. And I'm not totally against maths books. If children want to read a maths book, okay, fine, read it. If that's really what your heart is saying and your heart is open. The thing that I don't like is when it's contracted and then they're saying read a maths book, because that's not really serving anybody. It's like this contracted energy. Nobody wants that. It's not doing anything, it's not doing anything for the planet, for the child. No learning is happening. But if they want to read that maths book, go for it, of course. You know, my daughter loves reading. She's 4 and she loves finding letters, and I haven't even taught her that. It's just something that she enjoys, and she's really good at languages. She's speaking 2 languages already, and that's just innate in her. So I'm just letting that happen, you know. I'd love to know a little bit more about the homeschooling part, because I know this question would probably be huge for a lot of people, especially given where we're at the world. So was homeschooling something you chose from the beginning, or was it a transitional thing from mainstream school? And how did you approach it, or how do you approach it in terms of freedom versus a set curriculum? Because I know every family and every person is different, but maybe that could help people to understand a bit more.
Yeah. So for me, it was already a decision that I had made, really even before I had her, when I was pregnant. It was something I knew I always wanted to homeschool. And then I was actually working in the school system when I got pregnant. And then for the first couple of years of her life, I worked part-time. And so there was even a question of, well, maybe, since I work in the school system, we could work it out. But I just always felt like I really wanted that time with her for me. I wanted to be able to teach her and to have those moments. So it was something I sort of always wanted to do. And then the pandemic happened, and it just sort of like, it was like, okay, here it is. And that's actually when I stopped working full time, was right at that time. So it sort of all lined up, and her age as well. Like even now, she's still just 4, turning 5 this summer. So we're still kind of getting into it. But for me, I think it's mostly an unschool type of thing, but I do still like to use a little bit of curriculums, and but I really let her lead. I guess that would be my biggest thing, is I like it to be self-led. So if she's not into what I'm showing, I'm like, okay, well, what would you like to do? And I follow her interest. And I think that helps a lot. But I have had a lot of, friends and people in the community that have transitioned, that weren't originally homeschooling, but transitioned after all of this. And I know that that's a whole new thing. But I think the biggest thing that's helped me is community. Like we have a really good homeschool community here, and that makes such a difference, like especially because it is just her here. So her having those other children to interact with, I mean, that makes all the difference. It really does.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I've been hearing that more and more from the parents that I've been connecting with around homeschooling, is that actually they're not missing anything, because there's plenty of other children that they can connect with and everything like that. In my situation here, I'm in Uruguay, so we're kind of we have the family and we have some local children, but it's not kind of the same as when I'm in Australia, and there's kind of this tap of people that are all doing the same thing. So I'm still kind of figuring out which steps are going to suit her. At the moment, she's doing a Montessori just a couple of days a week, and the rest of the time she's with us or with friends or whatever. And we won't be sending her to the mainstream school. So we'll just have to work out if we're going to be traveling again. Probably she'll just be traveling with us, and just make sure that she has the social interaction wherever she is. And I know that the learning is going to be happening in any place. And I'm not concerned about, is she going to go to university? Because that's not even in my sphere of thought anymore, because there's just like so many options in the world that we can be and do. My goal for her is that she's happy and joyous. And if I can hold space for that, then I feel that's amazing. And that will then allow her to move into her purpose, because I know, maybe you find this as well with people you teach with meditation. I've noticed it in myself, even not even necessarily people I teach, but in myself. It's like many years ago, I'm like, well, what am I here for? What's my purpose? And it took me so long to uncover that, like so long, so much of my life discovering that. And I feel like if children are already kind of given that moment of exploration and just allowance, then perhaps that's a gift in itself. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And I love how you look at it that way, as in like, what's going to bring her joy, right? And looking at what you said earlier about contracting, like if it's making you contract, then what learning is really going to happen? Like, so that's huge right there, because joy really is our natural state. But there's so much stuff, so many layers and things that get on top of that and can sometimes get us away from our natural state of joy. So if we, go back to that and focus on what lights us up, what expands us, rather than that contracting. And it reminds me of today for my yoga class, I themed it on beginner's mind. And I think that's something really great for the new paradigm of education, is like we can't fill up a cup that's already full, right? So really just keeping that open mind and an open heart, rather than just loading us up with all this information and, oh, things are just this way. When you only see things from one paradigm, you miss out on what's really happening around you.
Yes, I love that. That's exactly how the new paradigm for me personally was birthed. It was a letting go of absolutely everything in my life at that time. Like everything just fell away, like my housing, my employment, even my relationship, like everything, it's still there, but at that moment it was perceived to be falling away. Everything just fell away. And I was like in this place of deep surrender. And I just said, you know what am I here to do? I know that I love teaching, but you know what? Is there something else I'm supposed to do? I'm just going to surrender absolutely everything, like my whole being. I'm going to surrender the whole being of myself to the universe. And I don't mean surrender like in terms of like this kind of heavy energy, like, oh, I'm just pulling bits out of me that are horrible. And it's not that. Like surrender is this really, like, it's this kind of dance of allowing your body to let go in order to, for what you were saying about being restored, in allowing it to then open up to a field of the newness. And so from that place, from meditation, when I sat in deep meditation is when I channeled in this new paradigm. And I was like, wow, this is huge, but what do I do with it? Thank you. I will serve. And I was crying and I was like, okay, I will serve. I will do whatever it takes to help these children of the world, because they were there and they were just looking at me in this meditation. And I knew that my soul was like, yes, that's what you're here for. And so it was confirmation I was already on track as a teacher, but it was like, well, what else is there to do? And so every day I still do that practice. I still wake up and I just say, you know, I'm here to serve. What is it that I do today? And it could be something so simple. It could be messaging one person. It could be not messaging one person. You know, it's I love what you're sharing. It's so needed in this new paradigm. It's like the old paradigm of needing a structure and needing to continue this kind of hamster wheel, this kind of place of grind. It's not serving anybody. Like, it's not serving you. And it may seem like you're being productive or that it's going to help the children because, you know, oh yes, if they keep on going, it's going to help them. But I feel like that's the new paradigm is the opposite of that. If you're just letting go of it all and then allowing the thing to come in that needs to come in, and then be like, wow, okay, today it's yoga. Okay, let's go for it. And you go for it like 100%. And then your heart is excited. And then you wake up the next day. What is it? Oh, okay, today I'm going to go with the whales. I just love whales. I'm going to go and like channel the whale energy. I'm going to go swim with them. Like, this is a beautiful life that I'm creating here, right? I might go do that. But yeah, I think it's so powerful what you've just shared with everybody. If everybody could like really just take that in. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, I wanted to ask you another question around your model of education, because actually I found Brittany energetically and online, and I looked at her website and I was like, wow, this is so beautiful what she's created. And I really loved how you had there the body, the mind, the soul, and community, like all of those aspects. I thought, wow, this is totally necessary and beautiful place to create education from. Was there anything else you wanted to share around that that project or that energy of those words that I've shared with you?
Yeah. So the model that I have is very similar to the model that I would approach like the human psyche with and healing, and which is why I, you know, studied the transpersonal psychology rather than going for the clinical, is really mind, body, spirit, and heart too, right? So, and then community was that fourth piece, because I think that we are a social species. We're not meant to be in isolation. And that's something really important to remember right now, you know, with everything that's been going on in the world. I know that some people might be lacking the social life that maybe they've had in the past or are used to. And we really are a social species, and coming together in community, there's so much that we can do together when we collaborate, right? Rather than competing or judging or all these things, but really coming together and seeing each person in their uniqueness, right? We're, like you said earlier, there's no other Brittany, there's no other Monique. We're all unique and we have something to bring. And when we, you know, educate for the whole child, the whole person, you know, we can really help that person bring their gifts up, you know, so we don't have to, it's not going to look the same. The education path shouldn't look the same for every child. I think that's a big paradigm shift, is that it's every path is unique. And we can't like box a child into one little place and have this linear path. That's not how it works. So just, that's what I would say, is just this holistic approach, and, you know, focusing on the individual child, but then also coming together as community and valuing what each person can bring to the table.
Yeah, I really align with that wholeheartedly, and that's how the book was formed, because as I sat with the energy of, well, what is the new paradigm? I went to write a sentence and it just didn't flow out of me. Like I had it all inside and it just wasn't flowing, and I sat a bit deeper and I was like, that's the piece that's needed. Community, people. Like, this is not your paradigm. This is not your story. This is a global mission that's here to help humanity. So let's see who's also aligned with that. And so then I met different educators from around the world who also had that same like vision and mission as me. And that's how the book was formed, because it just made sense to do it together. It's more effortless. And so I like to think of it not as a book, but as as a mission as well. And it gets me excited, as you can see. I'd also love to ask you, which is the question I ask everybody who comes on our podcast, is if you could have any vision, like imagining the future is now, like, it can be anything big, whatever. Can you imagine or let me know, what is your vision for a new paradigm of education?
Well, the HeartFirst vision is a world where hearts are educated as much as minds. And I think that is huge. I mean, if we can start as a collective to live more in our hearts, I mean, the shifts that can happen from that are just beautiful. And the heart's magnetic field is so much stronger than the brain's. And so when one person comes into their heart and they're radiating out love and compassion, they're transforming the lives of all the people they come in contact with. So that would be my vision, is a world where hearts are educated just as much as minds, because we just put so much effort and attention on the intellect. And I mean, the human heart is really it's our greatest strength, our greatest power. The mind is a wonderful servant, but a terrible master. I think that's a Confucius quote. I can't really remember who said that, but it's so true. And our society has kind of been flipped, where we focused more on the mind and less on the heart. And that breeds greed. It breeds competition. It breeds all these difficult things that we're seeing in our society where, love, it really just, it takes away all that. It takes all that suffering and it transmutes it. And there's just so much joy and compassion and kindness that's in our hearts. And if we come back to that, I don't know what's possible for humanity, like a beautiful new earth.
Yeah. Yes, I love that. I hear you wholeheartedly, if I can use that pun. I didn't mean it that way. The words just flew out of me. But
Yeah.
I totally believe that I call it awakening, but heart math, heart education, it's definitely the key for the new paradigm of education. It's huge. Before we close, could I just ask you maybe one little tip that you could tell people who are still learning about connecting with the heart? Like, for example, I know when I was still learning about my heart, and sometimes my heart would feel closed, or I'd feel kind of suffering, and I'd be like, oh, do I really have to focus on the heart? It hurts. Like, what could you help somebody or give them a little tip so that they could start to feel that awakening that we're talking about in the heart?
Well, what first comes to mind when you ask that question is something I read in this book right here. I'll show it since I have it in front of me. It's called Living from the Heart. It's about heart rhythm meditation. And in this book, she mentions this story from, I think, Greek mythology. And it talks about how the gates of the heart are blocked by two guard dogs. And those guard dogs are all of our past wounds and traumas and how they affect us in the present moment. And in order to really get into our heart, we have to face those dogs. So, sometimes there is a lot of pain there in our heart. And so we have to be willing to face whatever those dogs are and to find ways to cope with that, to transmute the suffering, to heal, in order to, get past those and make those some friendly dogs, right? Rather than guard dogs. So that would be my first thing, is to be willing to be vulnerable and uncomfortable and deal with the pain. And then another thing that comes to mind is metta, loving kindness meditation. I love that meditation practice for getting into the heart. And I think bringing somebody into your mind and heart that you love unconditionally, maybe a child or someone else in your family, and feeling that love for them, sometimes that allows the heart to expand so that you can bring that compassion for yourself, for other people in the world, maybe even for people that you don't like or are triggered by. That's part of the practice. So I would definitely recommend metta, loving kindness meditation to anybody, because I think it's so helpful at opening and expanding the heart and bringing more compassion.
They're beautiful tools. Thank you for sharing those. That's something new for myself as well. And I guess, of course, they could meet with you and connect with you in your programs as well, because obviously everything you're offering with meditation is also the pathway and the gateway for the heart opening, isn't it, as well? It leads me into my final part of the podcast, where you're able to just give an offering or something that you're serving people with at the moment.
Yeah, so Lean Into Love is my 40-day meditation program. The next one is starting on 2/22.
Oh, wow.
Which is an energetic date. And the introductory price is $220 right along with that date. But in that program, we will learn and practice more than 10 different meditation techniques that are centered around the heart. There will be weekly heart chakra yoga. And so we'll really be opening our heart. And as we deepen in the meditation practice, we'll deepen in the back bends. So it's just like this really energetic heart opening. And we have weekly women's circles where we get together and support each other in the practice. So I love that program. And next week on the 14th, I am going to be hosting a Power of Love Summit, where I'll be bringing some speakers together, including Monique, to talk about the power of love and compassion and how it can heal and transform ourselves and the world at large. It's a free summit, so if anyone is interested in that, definitely reach out to me. I would love to have you.
Yeah, that's so powerful as well. And if anybody's watching this in the future as well, just check out all the links that we'll place down in the podcast, because I'm sure Brittany will have other offerings and her amazing school and courses as well for our children, which is just so profound. All of that will be down in the links for us to access as well. I want to say thank you so much. Namaste. And it's been a really beautiful honor and a real blessing to have you.
Yes, thank you.
As this co-creative space on a new paradigm of education. Yeah, thank you. So thank you for tuning in, everybody, to a new paradigm of education. So I hope today that you take a moment just to maybe place your hand on your heart and just to connect with yourself. And even if it's just for a few seconds, just allowing yourself to breathe in and out and just feeling yourself, starting to understand and to connect with yourself. And I know from there that the right steps for you are going to all fall into place. Namaste, everybody. Thank you.